Family only at this table, my dad said as he closed the door behind me on Christmas Eve. My sister laughed. You don't belong here. I stood outside, watching my $7,800 holiday budget toast without me. So I froze every card, canceled every bill, and mailed one letter that made their new year start with court papers. I stood outside in the freezing air, my breath visible against the December night, clutching the gift bags I had spent weeks carefully assembling. Inside, the glow of the Christmas tree reflected off the window panes, and laughter erupted from the dining room. The door shut firmly behind me with a click that sounded far too final. You don't belong here, my sister sneered just before the door closed. I caught one last glimpse of her smug face as she turned back to the table, her expensive necklace glimmering under the chandelier. The whole family was gathered around the oversized oak table I had bought for them last year. They were toasting with champagne. Champagne I had unknowingly paid for. My $7,800 holiday budget being cheerfully consumed without me. I stayed there for a moment, blinking against the sting of cold and betrayal. My hands trembled slightly, but not from the winter air. From the inside, I could still hear the echo of my father's voice. Family only at this table. Family. That word felt like poison now. The truth was, I should have seen this coming. For years, I had been the silent financier of their lives, covering my sister's credit card debt, helping my parents with their mounting bills, paying for my niece's school tuition, summer camps, and even part of my brother-in-law's business venture that failed before it even started. And yet, here I was, excluded, dismissed like an unwanted outsider. I slowly turned and walked back to my car, the snow crunching beneath my boots. The brightly wrapped presents in my back seat now looked like some cruel joke. I had carefully picked out something special for each of them. A designer purse for my sister, a limited edition watch for my father, even a set of rare teas my mother claimed she loved. But none of it mattered. Not to them. As I sat behind the wheel, staring blankly ahead, something in me broke. But not in the way they expected. Not in the way they wanted. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Instead, for the first time in years, I felt clarity. I would no longer be the family's ATM. I would no longer fund their luxuries while they spit venom behind my back. If they wanted distance, I would give them exactly that. And so, while they toasted to my absence inside, I began to plan my own kind of holiday gift, one they wouldn't be able to return or ignore. 2 days later, after freezing every credit card, canceling every automatic payment, and cutting off every financial lifeline they had comfortably depended on, I dropped one final envelope in the mailbox. Certified mail. Legal papers enclosed. Their new year would start not with fireworks, but with court papers. You might think this all started on Christmas Eve. You'd be wrong. The rot in my family had been growing for years, like mold creeping quietly behind expensive wallpaper. The truth is, I was never truly family to them. I was a wallet with a pulse. It began after college. I had landed a solid job, nothing fancy, but steady. My sister Lisa, the so-called jewel of the family, had already developed a taste for luxury far beyond her means. My father liked to joke that she was born wearing designer shoes. My mother called her our little princess. And me? I was the practical one, which, in their language, meant the one who pays. When Lisa's husband left her, after cheating, lying, and draining their savings, my parents looked to me. Family helps family. My mother whispered like a broken record, her eyes wide with guilt-laced manipulation. I agreed. Of course I did. Ellie, my niece, was barely 4 at the time. Someone had to keep a roof over their heads. First came the rent, then the groceries, then utility bills, then emergencies that never seemed to end. You're such a good son. Your sister is lucky to have you, my father would say, while never reaching for his own checkbook. But the real poison came later. When Lisa started working again, a job with a solid salary and full benefits, I thought my role would finally shrink. I had sacrificed vacations, promotions, even relationships to hold my family together. But instead of gratitude, Lisa evolved. She upgraded her car while I drove my decade-old sedan. She bought designer bags while I cut coupons for groceries. She enrolled Ellie in private ballet classes while I skipped my own medical appointments to avoid extra expenses. And still, they wanted more. You make more money than us, Lisa would say, her voice syrupy sweet but loaded with venom. It's only fair. My parents, sitting silently at the dinner table, always nodded in agreement. Of course they did. The arrangement worked perfectly for them. But their greed wasn't even the worst part. The worst was the humiliation. At family dinners, Lisa would take subtle jabs in front of everyone. "Oh, don't be so cheap, Dave," she'd sneer if I questioned her latest lavish expense. "Not everyone can live like you. No vacations, no hobbies. But I guess that's how you afford to help us. Right, Mom?" The room would erupt in awkward chuckles, as if mocking me with some inside joke. I would fake a laugh and swallow my pride. Again. But everything snapped the night I overheard them. I had arrived early for Thanksgiving. As I stepped quietly into the house, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. "Honestly, Lisa," my father chuckled, "your brother's such a loser. No wife, no kids, nothing. He clings to this family like it's all he's got." "Yeah," my sister added, her voice using cruelty, "you should be grateful we even include him at all. I mean, who else would tolerate him? At least he's good for something, paying my bills." They laughed. My mother joined in. I froze. All those years of sacrifice, of quietly taking every financial hit, of being the dependable one, and this was how they spoke about me behind closed doors. I didn't confront them that night. Not yet. I left quietly, my stomach burning like acid. But inside me, something shifted permanently. For the first time, I allowed myself to see the truth. They didn't love me. They loved what I provided. The next month, my sister's demands grew bolder. She called, asking if I could cover a small loan, $5,000 for a down payment on a luxury timeshare. I said no. Her response was immediate and brutal. "Well, after everything I've done for you," she spat. "Don't be a selfish loser, Dave." That word again. Loser. The very next day, my father called me, voice full of stage disappointment. "Son, you know Lisa's struggling. What's a few thousand to you? You've always helped before." I almost laughed. Struggling? With her designer handbags, spa weekends, and luxury vacations? Struggling? Then came the final insult. My sister sent me a message. "You're lucky we still let you sit with us at the family table. Most families would have cut off dead weight like you already." That Christmas, they did exactly that. And when my father shut the door in my face with those final words, "family only at this table," they weren't just excluding me from dinner. They were excluding me from the family entirely. But here's the part they didn't see coming. I had receipts. Literal receipts. Years' worth of bank statements, wire transfers, credit card payments I made on their behalf. Every dime I spent bailing them out, every loan I covered, every bill I quietly paid while they laughed behind my back, all carefully documented. And now, all of it was in my lawyer's hands. Because this wasn't just emotional anymore. It was financial exploitation. Fraud. And by the time they opened that envelope on New Year's Day, certified mail, priority delivery, they would realize that I wasn't the family loser. I was their victim. And victims eventually fight back. The certified letter arrived on January 2nd, right after they finished spending my money on their lavish New Year's Eve party. I know exactly how it unfolded. My father would have opened the envelope first, his face twisting in confusion as he pulled out the thick stack of legal documents. My mother probably tried to read over his shoulder. Lisa, my sister, standing behind them, arms crossed, smug as always at first. But then the smugness evaporated. Because attached to those papers was a full financial audit. Every transfer, every loan, every silent bailout I had provided for over 6 years, itemized, timestamped, and accompanied by my lawyer's demand for full reimbursement under the grounds of financial abuse, coercion, and sustained exploitation. And attached to that? Notice of pending civil litigation. I didn't hear from them for 3 days. Then my phone rang. It was my father. The second I answered, the shouting started. "What do you think you're doing?" He roared so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You're suing your own family." I stayed calm. Ice cold. "I'm protecting myself," I said flatly. "From people who use me. Legally. Financially. Emotionally. For years." "You ungrateful little," my father's voice cracked with rage. "After everything we've done for you." "You mean after everything I've done for you?" I corrected. "After the thousands I've poured into your bills, your vacations, Lisa's shopping sprees, Ellie's private school, and all while you sat back laughing behind my back." "Yes. You're welcome." My mother jumped on the line. She must have been on speaker. Her voice was full of rehearsed tears. "Sweetheart, please. We're family. We made mistakes. But this is cruel. You kicked me out of Christmas," I said, my voice low but steady. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." Then came Lisa. Predictably, she couldn't resist inserting herself. "You always thought you were better than us," she hissed. All you've ever done is hold money over our heads. You were just bitter that I was the favorite. Favorite. Even now, she couldn't help herself. You're right, Lisa, I said, my tone colder than ice. You were the favorite. Congratulations. But your little reign is over. The court will see exactly how much you appreciated me. You wouldn't dare, she spat. It's already done. I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. Like a man who had been carrying a burning house on his back, and finally dropped it. 2 weeks later came the mediation hearing. They thought I was bluffing. They walked into that conference room like royalty. My father in his overpriced suit, my mother with her fake tears, Lisa in full designer armor. All three sat across from me like vultures ready to pounce. But then my attorney opened the folder. Exhibits A through G. Bank statements. Signed loan agreements. Screenshots of texts where they openly mocked me while demanding more money. Voicemails where Lisa laughed about how easy it was to get me to pay. Even a few recordings I'd made when they thought I wasn't listening. Their faces drained of color as each document slid across the table. My sister's fake confidence crumbled first. She looked around, desperate for someone to stop the bleeding. Where did you get all this? She whispered, her voice thin. I kept receipts, Lisa, I answered simply. Unlike you. My father was next. His voice was brittle. This isn't necessary. We can resolve this like adults. You had years to behave like adults. My lawyer cut in sharply. You chose exploitation. You're fortunate we're offering private settlement instead of criminal charges. My mother tried her last card. Guilt. You're destroying this family. No, I said. You destroyed it. I'm just documenting the wreckage. Silence. Even Lisa, the master manipulator, had no retort. The final settlement was brutal for them, and beautiful for me. Full repayment schedule. No more financial contact allowed. Failure to comply? Immediate escalation to court with criminal charges for financial fraud and coercion. They signed. They had no choice. As I walked out of the building that day, my sister's final words followed me like the pitiful whimper of a wounded animal. You'll regret this. I turned to her one last time. No, I smiled. For the first time in my life, I won't. The settlement was signed, but the war wasn't over. In many ways, it had just begun. For the first time in years, I cut off every financial artery they had comfortably leached from. The payments stopped. The favors stopped. The emergencies were no longer mine to solve. And that's when the panic set in. 3 weeks after the mediation, my mother called. Not to apologize, of course not, but to test the waters. Sweetheart, I was just wondering if we could talk. Privately. No lawyers, no anger. I paused for a moment, savoring the desperation behind her voice. I have nothing to discuss, I said calmly. The settlement speaks for itself. Her voice cracked. But you're punishing us, Dave. You're tearing this family apart. You tore it apart long before the lawyers showed up. I replied coldly and hung up. But it didn't stop there. They couldn't believe I was serious. They had spent years molding me into their obedient, spineless provider, and now that puppet was cutting his own strings. A few days later, my father showed up at my apartment uninvited. The knock was sharp, urgent. I opened the door to see him standing there, his once arrogant posture now slightly slumped. He looked smaller somehow, as though the weight of his own choices was finally crushing him. We need to fix this, he said, trying to sound firm, but only managing to sound pathetic. There's nothing to fix, I answered. You think you've won something here? He hissed, voice rising. You'll be alone for the rest of your life. Family forgives. You'll regret this. I stared at him, my voice colder than ice. You don't get to preach forgiveness to the person you robbed. He opened his mouth to retaliate, but no words came. The silence between us was louder than any argument we had ever had. Finally, he stormed off, muttering curses under his breath. And then Lisa snapped. She was always the most fragile one behind all her bravado, but I had underestimated just how badly her little kingdom would crumble. 2 months after the settlement, she called me. Not to apologize, not to make peace, but to threaten. I hope you're happy, she spat through the phone, venom practically dripping. You humiliated me. My credit's destroyed. My accounts are frozen because of your little lawsuit. You destroyed your own credit when you lived on my money for half a decade. I replied calmly. She laughed bitterly. You think you've won? You're pathetic, Dave. You'll never be anything but bitter and alone. You'll never have a family because no one would ever choose to be with you. Her words were meant to stab deep, but they didn't. Not anymore. Because I finally understood something. Her only real power was the guilt she could make me feel. And the guilt was gone. "You're wrong," I said softly. "Because for the first time in my life, I've chosen myself." And I hung up. The fallout grew even uglier after that. I heard rumors through distant relatives. My parents were forced to sell one of their vacation homes to cover what they owed me. My father's retirement plans evaporated overnight. The fancy country club membership? Canceled. The luxury SUV Lisa loved to flaunt? Repossessed. Lisa moved back in with my parents, her Instagram profile quietly disappearing. No more perfectly staged vacations, no more fake luxury posts. Just silence. They tried to spin their downfall as my betrayal to anyone who would listen. But people talk. And people listen. And slowly, the narrative shifted. More relatives began to distance themselves from them, quietly admitting they had always suspected Lisa was a parasite and that my parents had enabled her. The final blow came unexpectedly. One afternoon, my lawyer called. "There's been a development," he said. "The district attorney's office opened a preliminary investigation into possible tax fraud tied to the funds you transferred over the years." I blinked. "Wait, tax fraud?" He explained. "Apparently, my parents had never properly reported the financial assistance I had given them. Over the years, they had presented it as gifts to the IRS, despite the amounts being far beyond non-taxable thresholds. Combined with the paper trail we had gathered for the civil case, it was enough to trigger federal interest. In other words, their greed might cost them even more." I sat there for a long moment, processing everything. "This could ruin them," I said slowly. "Yes," my lawyer agreed. "But it wasn't your doing. They built this house of cards. All you did was finally stop holding it up." Weeks later, my mother left me one final voicemail. Her voice was thin, fragile, defeated. "Dave, please. We were wrong. I see that now. Your father, he can't sleep at night. Lisa, she's not well. We're lost without you. Please call me. Please." I listened to the message twice. Then I calmly deleted it. Because after all the years of manipulation, of betrayal, of being used like a human ATM, I no longer needed their approval. I no longer needed them at all. The chains were broken. They had spent years calling me a loser. And yet in the end, I was the only one who walked away free. 1 year later, I sat in my office, overlooking the city skyline. The air smelled different now, like freedom. My life had shifted completely. The crushing weight of my family's greed, manipulation, and endless demands gone. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living to fund someone else's bad decisions. And they were still unraveling. After the tax fraud investigation gained momentum, everything spiraled for them even faster than I expected. My parents were slapped with massive penalties. Decades of shady accounting unraveled under federal audits. Their precious, golden years were now soaked in unpaid debts, legal fees, and frozen assets. The house they loved to parade as a symbol of their success sold at auction. Lisa, oh, poor Lisa, had it even worse. Her credit was decimated, her bank accounts frozen, and when the IRS started crawling through her finances, they discovered things even I didn't know about: offshore transfers, unpaid business taxes, and fake shell companies she used to hide side hustles from her own husband. It turned criminal. Indictments were issued. She pled out to avoid prison. The same sister who once called me a loser as she slammed the Christmas door in my face now worked night shifts as a waitress, barely making rent. Her luxury handbags long since sold, her Instagram deleted, her fake influencer lifestyle reduced to nothing. Her fall was spectacular. But none of that brought me the real satisfaction. The real victory was internal. For years, they had programmed me to believe I was weak, only valuable if I was useful to them. They weaponized guilt. They weaponized family. But when I finally cut the cord, I realized something devastatingly simple. Their love was always conditional. My love for myself never should have been. Last week, I received one final letter. Handwritten. From my mother. "David, I know you'll never forgive us. I see that now. You were always the strongest one, even though we treated you like the weakest. We failed you. I hope you find peace. We cannot ask for your help anymore. We cannot ask for anything. I am truly sorry." I read it once, twice, then calmly slid it into the shredder, because this was no longer my burden. As I sat back, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my attorney. "IRS investigation officially closed. No further claims against you. You're 100% cleared." I smiled. For the first time in years, I had full closure. No more legal traps. No more debts. No more family shackles. I had built something they could never take. A life that was finally mine. They called me a loser. But the truth was simple. I was never the loser. I was their lifeline. And once I cut the cord, they drowned in their own greed. I simply walked away. Victorious. Free.